those hallelujahs, you'd think we were still in the Easter season. As you are keenly aware, before 1983, when a pastor was put in place, a pastor of a parish was often put in place for life. And so, in the history of my parish, since 1952 on Long Island, we had 2 pastors in 50 years. Pretty remarkable in terms of the stability. There was a neighboring parish, however, that had a pastor there for 34 years. And 34 years is an incredible amount of time. And the man went out with such fanfare and delight and such joy. People revered him. He was a part of so many people's lives, as so many priests are part of our lives today. However, he stuck around. He stuck around and stayed in the rectory and saw before him things changing. And it wasn't his show anymore. And that was very tough. It was very tough. Because everything he had created seemed to be being dismantled. However, in fact, it wasn't being dismantled. It was just being somewhat updated and transformed. In another instance, he would seek to undermine the new man. He would carry favor with some folks in the parish and challenge them to challenge the new pastor about some of the things that he was doing. It was not a pleasant experience, and eventually the old pastor had to leave, and did not leave well. It was a matter of pride for the old pastor, and it was a matter of jealousy. Last fall, I was talking with one of the former rectors of one of the colleges that we have in Ireland, and I said to him, I said, "How are you doing?" He says, "Not well." I said, "Not well?" He says, "No." He says, I was rector for 12 years. And he says, and the new man's in there. And he's doing things that I'm very jealous of, things I wish to accomplish, but I couldn't accomplish. I said, "You should have stuck around to help him." He says, "Oh no, I learned a long time ago. The old man has to go. Let the new blood in and allow that fresh mind and that fresh approach. I made my contribution, and it's time to go." 2 very different experiences of leadership, and that could be in the church or in the corporate world or any place else. What's very striking is the jealousy factor. Now, I know that the fifth joyful mystery is the finding of Jesus in the temple, but I'd like to digress today and speak about the flight into Egypt. It's another scene from Jesus' life that I think is critical for us for our reflection. Jesus is the talk of the town. Jesus seems the one who people are abuzz about. And Herod doesn't like that, because Herod himself has been on the throne for over 30 years. And Herod himself is a skilled administrator, a sharp individual, someone who is non-negotiable when it comes to power. And so he strikes down and says, we got to get rid of them. We must find that Christ child. We must destroy that Christ child, because that Christ child is a threat. God provides and gets Mary, Jesus, and Joseph out of the danger of Herod's grip into freedom. My friends, there are a number of lessons from that little scenario, that little story in the Gospels that we read about the flight into Egypt, that have great implication on our lives. The first is the sense of jealousy. I'd like to talk about jealousy, because I think jealousy plagues us all. Because sometimes we don't admit how good we are, perhaps the first sin of our lives, and how blessed we are. We're always looking to the other as having more gifts, more talents, better looking, better connected, a better life. But in fact, I would argue, as been my experience, if we were to go up to that person and tell that person that we're jealous of that person for a certain thing or a set of things, we might find ourselves receiving a blessing in return. Let me give you, for instance. I have a friend of mine who I'm very jealous of, the way that she just incredibly writes every day and shows her skills over and over again in theology. And I went up to her one day and I said, I'm really jealous of this fact. And then she in turn gave me a blessing and told me the blessing that I was to her and how she was jealous of me. I didn't think anyone could be jealous of me, but in fact she was jealous of me. See, when we hold jealousy in, it eats away at us. It destroys us. It makes us become less than we are. Putting it out there and telling the other person, I'm really jealous of the fact that you're so devout. I'm so jealous of the fact that you're so skilled in this area. Puts everything out there. And then we're not on the Herodian hunt. And I say the Herodian hunt because that's what motivated Herod, jealousy. He wanted to destroy every obstacle in his course. He wanted to make sure that any threat was taken down and taken down quickly. So the first posture I'd like to offer us this day is dealing with our jealousies and putting them right out there and allowing ourselves to admit our jealousies, but in turn being surprised by the blessings that might return to us. The second thing is this. We live in a very different, diverse society. We're not a monolithic, a very stratified society anymore. People are very different. Different color, different languages, different cultures. And sometimes we find ourselves not used to that, and perhaps even consider that a threat in our lives. This is not the way it's been, and I want to hold on to this. And so perhaps the encouragement for us, my friends, is to get to know the other, and get to know the other person, get to know their culture, and appreciate their language. And in doing so, our lives might be enriched in a way that we least expected. Instead of bad-mouthing, undermining, and constantly questioning the other, let us be a people that perhaps are more open. We hear so much in our schools today, amongst the young, about bullying, and it's so popular amongst the young. But even as adults, we can do it too. We may not go online, we may not say it verbally, we may not add comments to the conversation, but we might be people who can take down other people in a moment's notice. Let's pray for that spirit of openness. That spirit of closure destroyed Herod and destroyed his future and his legacy. Let it not destroy ours. One of the great gifts that we have at St. John's University is this magnificent new church called St. Thomas More. And one of the windows that the people insisted be present prominently in the church was this picture of the flight into Egypt. And it was critical because so many of our students are from foreign lands and have traveled far and wide to get to America, this land of plenty, this land of freedom. People know that journey. They know that struggle. They also know that God is present in their struggle. So, my friends, as we take a digression from the joyful mysteries, to be challenged in some respect by this flight into Egypt, but encouraged also, let us consider two postures. One is a sense of dealing with our jealousy, putting it right out there, and admitting to another person how we might be jealous of her or him, or perhaps a whole group. And the second thing is perhaps not being so fearful of meeting the other and dealing with the other and living with the other in peace and tranquility. We do that, my friends, we might find ourselves blessed in a way we've least expected. Is it easy? No. We recognize that some people can't do it. Herod couldn't do it. That first pastor I spoke of couldn't do it. But we can do it. Because we know that as Jesus, Mary, and Joseph sought to fly from the evil one, to fly from the darkness of Herod to the light of a new day, so too God is on our side.